Good evening. Tonight's story is called The Underwater City, so snuggle up under the blankets and prepare for a wonderful night of sleep. And once you're all settled and close your eyes, the city of Cremenos, unlike any other city in the world, if you woke up in one of the many one-bedroom apartments downtown, you might think that you were in New York or Tokyo. When you looked out the window, you would see tall, glassy skyscrapers reaching toward the sky and shading the streets far below. If you listened carefully, you would even hear the gentle chatter of more than 30 million people as they headed to work. If you were in the top penthouse suite in the apartment building at the corner of First Street and First Avenue, you might be confused. From here, you can see both the Eiffel Tower and Empire State Building at the same time. The city of Cremenos was built as a mosaic of some of the world's biggest cities on a 15-minute walk. You would also be able to see the needle-like CN Tower of Toronto, the Dancing House of Prague, and the Gateway Arch of St. Louis. What really sets this city apart from all others is what you would see when you look up to the sky. You would never see white clouds lazily drifting by on summer afternoons, and you would never see Arcnimbostrass's clouds forming above you before a rainstorm when you step outside. You would never need an umbrella or a jacket, since the city's founding in the year 2300 every day has been dry and mild. Cremenos, the world's first underwater city. 30 countries came together during the 23rd century to create this masterpiece of a city that was voted most beautiful vacation destination 45 years in a row, which only made sense for the founders to give the city a Greek name like Atlantis, the city that inspired its design. The founders decided on the name Cremenos from the Greek word meaning hidden. The climate is controlled with artificial lights that replicate the rising and setting of the sun. Most of the city's food is imported from the above water world. However, there are farms at the edge of the city that produce enough crops to support the city's population about the size of Shanghai. John was among the first generation of people to be born. In Cremenos, his parents had originally migrated to the city located on the ocean floor off the coast of Madagascar. When John was a child, he used to wonder what the above-ground world was like. His parents would tell him stories about their cross-country trips across America to places like Yellowstone National Park and the Grand Canyon. He begged his parents to take him to America when he was younger, but by the time he was a teenager had completely lost the desire to go abroad. He had watched enough movies from around the world to know that Cremenos was as beautiful as anywhere. John had worked as a window cleaner ever since he was 15 years old. Every morning he was emailed a list of places that needed to be cleaned on the inside and outside of the glass dome that covered the city for almost 50 years. He had spent his days driving around the city in his pickup and exploring every nook and cranny. He must have been down every side road and driven around the edge of the glass dome at least 1,000 times in his life. The city was modeled after 32 of the most famous cities in the world. Eventho, he had never been to any of those cities himself. From what John had heard, each district was almost identical to the original. Overall, the city was somewhere between the size of Singapore and Hong Kong. Now that he was less than 6 months away from retirement, he probably knew the city better than anyone. He knew where to get the most mouth-watering slices of pizza in New York. He could also tell you which rooftop in Tokyo offered the best view of the schools of hundreds of thousands of herring that swam by during the day. He loved his job as a window washer because every day sent them to a different part of the city where he got to meet the locals and learn a bit of their languages. As much as she enjoyed the work, he looked forward to spending retiremently on the sandy beach is in Little Lisbon, North Melbourne district. After a lifetime of washing the glass at these places, it would be nice to run the sand through his fingers with his eyes closed and listen to these gulls flying around him. He could even spend an entire day watching the school's fish swim by the city. Now that his time in the workforce was almost finished, it was his responsibility to train his replacement. On the day he was supposed to meet this successor, John's alarm went off at its usual time of 5 o'clock. He took a deep breath before hitting snooze twice when the alarm went off for the third time. He climbed out of bed with creaking knees and walked to the window of his small one-room apartment. He pulled open the curtains. The artificial light that mimicked sunlight hadn't yet been turned on, but the neon glow of lights from the clubs and bars on the street below cast agent le glow around his apartment. He yawned and rubbed his eyes. He lived in the part of town modeled after Chicago to give the area a more authentic feel. Giant fans were added to the roof of the Domator replicate gusts of wind. It was the only part of the city where you could experience something similar to a natural breeze. However, other parts of the city also had man-made weather substitutes in the wintertime. In second Stockholm, city workers would spend a couple of days spreading synthetic snow around the streets and build up snow banks next to the sidewalks. There was even a small outdoor skating rink designed to look like a natural pond in the summertime. In second Sol, sprinklers attached to the roof of the dome would turn on for a couple of hours. 2. Replicate rain showers if you were unlucky enough to get caught in them. Your clothes would cling to your skin as you ran back home for a dry outfit. John went to his cupboard and poured himself a bowl of oats imported from Canada and added milk that came from a dairy farm at the edge of town near New Caro, Heelso, sprinkled in pieces of dried seaweed collected by fishermen from the city after he had a cold shower to help wake himself up. He changed into his work uniform. He wore a pair of raggedy denim overalls with his name sewed into the chest by the time he rode the elevator from the 37th floor to the ground. And steps outside the artificial lights were beginning to illuminate the city, and the street lights were turning off one by one. The city was quiet, besides the humming of the occasional taxi going. He looked upward to the peak of the dome, where the faint glow of the real sun shone, and made the water look almost green after his retirement. He was planning to take a submarine cruise to London. His friends who had visited had told him that he should save his money and go to the local London district of Cremenos instead. However, he had to see the above-ground world at least once in his life. He wanted to ride the London and see what the view was like when the Eiffel Tower and Empire State Building weren't visible. He wanted to go to all 32 cities to see how they compared to the underwater version she knew from his apartment. John walked along the quiet street until he reached the parking garage where his pickup truck filled with all his cleaning supplies was located. He drove through the Cape Town district into Prague, and then got on the freeway, headed to Paris, turned on the radio to listen to the morning news. Each time he drove through a different district. The language changed. He got off the freeway within view of the Eiffel Tower and drove until he was in the far south end of the city, nicknamed Little Lisbon. This part of the city was one of his favorites. In his opinion, this was where the people were kind of stand where he felt most relaxed. It was built around an artificial harbor that flowed to the edge of the dome. Where there was a beach, there was now Ader at the beach. However, the sand ended at the edge of the dome, where the actual ocean took the place of where the ocean in Lisbon would be. John cruised slowly through the old part of Little Lisbon, with his window down. All along the main road were cobblestone streets filled with white buildings that had bright red orange roof. Shop owners walked along the cobblestone in the early morning light with straw brooms in their hands. They swept away the sand that got tracked into their stores from the nearby beaches. Most of the shopkeepers recognized John since he was here at least once a week, and they all waved at him with wide smiles on their face. She parked his car in front of his favorite cafe and walked in. The owner, a woman in her late 30s, waved and said "Hola dia" before putting an espresso cube under the spout of the espresso makers. He buttered 2 pieces of bread from the display case and carried them to John. They had been friends for years. She had come from Lagos, Nigeria, almost a decade previous with her husband, who worked as an engineer. He was helping build the new expanse of the city in the far west, knew what the new district would be. But there were rumors that it was going to be a South American city, maybe Sao Paulo or Bada. John had been hoping that the new district would be Buenos Aires ever since he saw pictures of Argentina in a magazine last fall. John spent about half an hour eating buttered bread with his coffee while reading the local newspaper. There was an article speculating the possibilities for the new development. Some people thought it might be Tepai, and others claimed that it would be Mexico City. A group of kids walked by while kicking a soccer ball back and forth and shouting at each other in Portuguese. The sound of children laughing was relaxing to John. It reminded him of when he was a kid and used to play soccer in second Rome.